recorded.
The last few times we've been, well, the long time we've been doing Daniel, but we did finished 8 and 9, and we need to just kind of review, because if anyone read 10, did anyone read 10?
Yeah.
I feel like I started it. Yes.
10 is 10 seems to build off of 8 and 9, I think. And so it's been a few weeks since we were on 9, but even longer since we did 8. So real quick, let's kind of see if we can put our brains together. In Daniel 8, Daniel seems to have at least one vision, maybe two. He has a vision of a ram and a he-goat. The ram's got a couple horns, one's higher than the other. The he-goat has 4 horns. No, I think the he-goat eventually has 4 horns. The he-goat destroys the ram, basically, and the he-goat grows 4 horns, and then either out of the 4 horns or out of the 4 winds, a little horn comes up. And it's a blasphemous horn, and ultimately the horn seems to go into the temple, and he tramples things, and then he casts truth to the ground, and he causes the stars of heaven to fall. And this occurs for 2,300 days, according to the vision that he saw, or at least part of the vision. Part of this vision is this occurs for 2,300 days, and then the sanctuary is cleansed. And
2,300?
Well, remember the days seem to suggest years, but this vision was called the call zone vision.
Yeah.
And Daniel agonized over it, and he wanted understanding. And when he asked for understanding, he receives another vision, which was an appearance of a man. And that appearance of a man in itself seemed to be a second vision. And it's a different word than vision. It was Mara vision. So in understanding the first vision, he seems what we think he sees Jesus in some form. He sees Jesus as an appearance of a man, but he also seems to hear him as a voice coming from between the banks of the Ulai River.
Right.
So the appearance of the man, the man tells Gabriel to explain the Mara. And so Gabriel explains what is the Mara, which was the appearance of the man. So he begins to explain the appearance of a man, which is Jesus, because Jesus tells him to. So he explains the Mara vision by beginning to review the shell zone vision of the goats and the little horn and the he-goat and the ram and the nations that they represent. They seem to represent the Medes and Greece and possibly Rome. And it could have even represented, the 4 generals from the Roman army that eventually takes over after Alexander the Great prematurely dies. They take over a kingdom. And then
Roman army or Greek?
The Grecian army or territory is divided between the 4 generals, I think we had said. And then we wondered, was the little horn that came up either from the 4, which would be from Greece, could have been Antiochus Epiphanes, or if the little horn came up from the 4 winds, which it's kind of unclear. If it came up from the 4 winds, then it didn't come up from Greece, but it could represent Rome, in which case it could represent the end of one seems to be the desecration of the temple of the natural Israel, but it could be figurative of the desecration of the spiritual as well, like what we're seeing now that's happening in slow motion.
When was the temple destroyed again? Was it?
Well, the damage that Antiochus did was probably in the 160s BC. The temple itself was destroyed in 70.
70. Okay. AD. Okay.
But Daniel doesn't understand either one of these.
Neither do I, yes.
Yeah, right. I don't think anyone does. They're still agonizing over what does it mean. Gabriel tells him that the Chalzone vision, the first one, is for the time of the end. So the question is, did they mean the time of the end of the Israel's natural kingdom? Or did it mean the time of the end of both kingdoms? Or does it only mean the time of the Roman, like the kingdom we're in, spiritual Israel?
Yeah.
Does it mean both? Does it mean only one, or is it the second one? And that's, I don't think anyone entirely is sure, but Daniel feels faint and is sick and gets sick. Neither vision is truly understood, even though Jesus seemed to tell him, hey, dude, tell Gabriel and explain it to him. So it would be a whole lot easier if they would be perfectly clear, but they seem to give secondary parables to explain the first parable, and it seems to muddy the water somewhat because it's so confusing.
I know, and Daniel says that he didn't understand, and he was like so annoyed by it. Or what did he say? He said appalled by it. That's what he called it. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets sick or something, right? But neither vision or neither is understood. Assuming there's two. Sick.
Yeah.
So then that leads us nicely into chapter 9, which Daniel's, and I think chapter 9 gets to about, I think it's, let me just see, verse 1. It seems to be the first year of Darius's reign, so it'd be like 539, maybe like year 66 or 67 of their captivity, which was 70 years. So Daniel's here reading Jeremiah's, and by the way, from 8 to 9 is like maybe 13 years, 12, 13 years. So 9, Daniel's reading Jeremiah's words and discovers that God's desolation of Israel ends at 70 years. So he fasts and prays for his people. And we read that in Jeremiah 29:10, excuse me. God says, after 70 years are accomplished for Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word towards you.
What did he say?
After 70 years are accomplished for Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word towards you. So he promises after 70 years, God's people who are captive to Israel, captive to Babylon, sorry, I will hear you and I will cause you to return to Israel after 70 years of being captive. Okay, so this is 3 years or so before the 70 years are up.
Jeremiah?
This is Jeremiah 29:10. It's also in Jeremiah 25. So while praying, Gabriel appears and gives Daniel insight into he says, I'm going to give you insight into the Maravision, which Daniel had in chapter 8.
Oh.
Okay, which is the appearance of a man. The man never says anything to Daniel. The man's only words that he saw in the Maravision was to tell Gabriel to explain the Maravision to Daniel.
So we think that's Jesus.
We think so, because it seems the picture that's laid out in 8 is, this is what's going to happen to your people. You're going to be totally desolate. You're going to, all this craziness is going to happen. Your temple is going to be desolate. Then eventually, after X number of years, 2,300 days, God cleanses his sanctuary. Okay. But in the midst of that, when Daniel says, well, what does that even mean? He asked for understanding, and the picture is of Jesus. So the picture seems to be, well, the answer to your problems is being presented, and that's Jesus. But there's no context for Daniel to quite understand how, why, in what fashion, or anything else. So so Gabriel shows up in chapter 9 in like verse 20 or something, or 19 or 20, in the midst of his fast. And he gives Daniel insight into the Mara. Again, it seems to be an insight or picture to Jesus. And in order to give him insight, because Daniel doesn't understand, he gives this another parable of 70 weeks is decreed upon your people and city. Again, another metaphor. And he says the point of the 70 weeks, and Daniel's probably like, what? Is to finish transgression, to make an end of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision, the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So we think that's pointing to who?
Jesus coming.
Jesus.
Messiah.
Or right. The Mara, right? The Mara appearance or vision or what have you. And so he's given insight into the Mara by the angel talking about all that Jesus is eventually going to do, but it's probably very confusing. But anyway, getting back to the 70 weeks, remember we talked about the 70 weeks and how it's confusing because instead of the angel saying, I really mean 490 years, which I'm going to divide out by 7 sevens. 70 times 7 would be 490. The angel says 70 weeks, or he doesn't say 77. I don't think it's even the word week.
Will be 77 sevens and 62 sevens.
Right. So it could be years. It could be periods of time. It could be weeks. It's interpreted a lot of times weeks or whatever. But I think when after the fact, in looking back, they probably realized maybe this is years. So the way it's broken out is the 70 years are broken out in 7, wait a minute, 62 and 1.
Right.
Or you multiply each one of those numbers by 7, you have 49 years, and then 434 years, and then 7 years, which is a total of 490.
Okay.
So we find that the first, we find that what seems to come closest was a rebuilding of the temple. I think it was in 457-ish BC by, was it Ahasuerus or something like that, who there was a stopping and starting for the temple, but they think that that's the one that this is referring to because the temple and the wall, I think, have to be restored. So let's tidy this chapter 9 up. The first 483 years point to Jesus's anointing. So he's anointed, you did the math, 26, 27 AD at age 30.
With John the Baptist.
Well, I don't know if he's anointed at the exact, was it by John the Baptist, right?
Yes.
Okay, right. He's baptized, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. In water.
This would be of the 490, this would be the like 483. And we know Jesus's ministry is 3.5 years. So that gives us 483 plus 3.5, so 486.5. And then he's crucified at that point. And then we find that it still leaves the other 3.5 years left, which we wonder is that a reference to potentially Stephen's stoning, which then forced all the Jews in Acts to begin, not all of them, a lot of them to relocate elsewhere because of all the persecution, and then the gospel spread to the rest of the Gentiles.
Right.
And so forth. But anyway, Jesus puts a stop to the daily sacrifice in the physical temple because it's not needed, and he's now the Passover lamb. Now that seems to sort of fit for us, but I'm not 100% sure if Daniel understood what this vision really meant even after this He may have, but I don't know. But I think in chapter 10, Daniel's referring to this. I think that he's referring to both of the things from 8 that he's still trying to get a grasp on what it may mean, I think. So let's start in 10. And if you could just do verse 1.
You want me to read?
Yeah.
In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar. Its message was true, and it concerned a great war. The understanding of the message came to him in a vision.
Okay, the understanding, he understood the thing, it says in my Bible, and he had understanding of the vision. So the vision's the Mara. So 3 years after chapter 9, and again, this would put it right seemingly at the 70-year mark, that Daniel understands the Mara, or the appearance of the man. So he seems to get it at this point. It's taken him quite a few years to understand what it means.
Why doesn't he tell us?
Well, I think we get it already. At least we get a portion of it. But so this is the 70th year. The word was revealed or uncovered. He makes mention of the thing was true. Any idea what he's referring to? Back in chapter 8, somebody turn to 8 and read verse 26.
The visions of the evenings and mornings that that has been given you is true, but seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future.
Okay, in that verse, the vision of the evening this morning, which is told, is true. That's the Mara. That's the word Mara. So that seems to say the vision of Jesus of the evenings and mornings is true. Now, Jesus, one of Jesus's, what he's known by is Jesus's truth, right? I am the truth and the life. How's that verse say? But
Way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah. So I think when Daniel says, getting back to chapter 10, verse 1, the word was true, he's referring to the Mara here, and he's referring to Jesus. It also says
the thing is true.
What's that?
The thing is true, was true.
He doesn't say specifically. He leaves this extremely vague.
I know.
The only thing is the word Mara, which seems to be what he saw, and he eventually talks about the chase call zone or whatever. But what warfare? He says there was a great conflict. Does anyone have anything different in verse 1 there? Warfare or conflict?
Great war.
If you do the footnote, it says, or true and burdensome.
Yeah, there's a lot of different interpretations in this.
You're talking about the last part of that verse that says concerned a great war.
Yeah. Right. So the question is, I wonder what warfare he's talking about. And if he's talking about his understanding now of the vision back in chapter 8, if he's talking about that, one of the things, and we don't have to turn there, but in 8:10 through 13, it says, and it waxed great, meaning a little horn, even to the host of heaven. The host of heaven are like the armies. And some of the hosts of the stars cast to the ground or were trampled. It magnified itself, the little horn, even to the prince of the host, who I think is Jesus. And it took away the continual burnt offering, and the host was given over to it together with the continual offering. And it continues to talk about this host, which seems to be some reference to a conflict or warfare. So I'm wondering if Daniel's referring in verse 1 in chapter 10 to that. Is his insight here towards what the Mara means, and he's referring to that warfare? I don't really know. It's not 100% clear, but I think it might be.
But you know what? My King James Version doesn't say anything about a great war. It actually says, the thing was true, but the time appointed was long.
Right.
And he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. That's what it says. It says nothing about a great war, but somehow in the international version, translated to a great war.
Well, it says, like, here's a different version. I think this is a Septuagint. I think it says the word was reliable instead of true, and it concerned a great tribulation instead of war or warfare.
It just says appointed time was long.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, there's great confusion as to exactly what it means here. But anyway, at the end of 1, and he understood the word and had understanding of the vision, meaning I, Daniel, had understanding of the Mara. So in other words, I seem to understand what this thing was with Jesus in somehow. I mean, not that he probably didn't refer to him as Jesus, but, you know, God's answer for the wickedness of our people, maybe. So somebody read 2, just 2.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. At that time, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate. Oops, that's it.
So what's he mourning? What is he mourning?
I don't know. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 weeks, full weeks. I don't have any idea.
I guess, like, was this when, like, they were going to be defeated?
Like, maybe his understanding now of the what happens to his people, in the long run, and how their sanctuary is, you know, destroyed. Yeah, maybe that's what he's mourning. I'm not really sure. It's not stated. It's probably related to the vision he seems to understand. Maybe the warfare.
Maybe, yeah.
Probably.
Well, they didn't even have a temple anymore when he saw this vision. It hadn't started to be built again.
Well, remember, right? He know right.
People were in captivity, but he knew they were going back.
I think they had started to go back, but I think he's gotten the fact that, okay, 70 years they're going back, and they begin to go back, because I think they had by this point, because I think Cyrus, who has been the king for 3 or 4 years, in verse 1, has already released the decree. So it's year 70. So they can go back. A lot of them didn't want to go back. Daniel probably didn't go back either. He probably stayed where he was, maybe because of his job, and he's an old man.
You know, they said that the Persians were, or Cyrus was a compassionate person. Like, he wasn't like.
Who said that?
Well, all the stuff I've read about Cyrus. When I would read Isaiah, you know, I would see Cyrus is mentioned in Isaiah. And we're talking 100 years before Cyrus was ever on the earth. He's mentioned there. So I read up on him, and it said, you know, he when he became a ruler, he was kind of like, you know what, you guys have been here long enough. He was a lot more compassionate. He wasn't like vicious, like Babylon, the Babylonian kings. That's what I've read about him. But, you know, God calls him his servant, Cyrus. Cyrus he didn't follow the one true God.
Right. It's weird, right?
But he said the Lord anointed him.
He did. Okay. Right. I agree. But I think the mourning piece here too might have something to do with the Chalzone vision that ends in Daniel 8:14 that says, and he said unto me, until 2000 and 300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be clean. And I think Daniel's saying, well, wait a second, we're just going back.
Yeah.
And we're reestablishing our throne. And now I'm getting visions of our sanctuary being, desolate. This must have been a struggle. And especially since he seems to now understand the marrow, or the appearance of the man. So I think there must have been a lot of sadness of, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
So we go back.
I see. Yep. I agree.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like that's terrible. We go
like,
back.
wait, we're just going back? What do you mean? And now you're showing me that in the future, our temple's going to be desecrated, and it's going to be knocked down, and we're going to be like, scattered as a people again.
Right. And this little horn that's speaking this blasphemous stuff, and it's been given the right to go in and destroy. And he probably doesn't realize the spiritual, temple, that the same thing happens in the second covenant. But, he certainly seems to be shocked and mourning about the first. So somebody read 3 and 4.
Go ahead, Max.
All right. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist.
Okay. So he fasts for 3 weeks. He doesn't eat pleasant bread, flesh or meat or wine. Until the whole 3 weeks are fulfilled. He doesn't anoint himself. I think some people think he didn't shower. Some think he didn't anoint himself with oil. Can you anoint yourself with oil? Is that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
And how often did they bathe anyway? They didn't bathe that often back then.
True. So he fasts until the 24th day of the first month, which seems to correspond to March. It also corresponded with one of their feast days, which seems to have passed. So the idea seems to be, well, maybe he had something. Maybe he had vegetables like he did. Remember they did early on, and they ate the good food in Daniel 1 and 2 or something. Him and his 3 friends.
Right.
They ate the good, instead of the delicacies. But
right.
So he's beside the Tigris River. This is the 3rd river in Daniel, the first one. Anybody remember the other ones? Anybody remember the names of the other ones?
No.
One was the Euphrates, which is in modern Iraq. Ulai, which is in Iran, and the Tigris is also in Iran. So now he's near the Tigris, and it's called the Great River for whatever reason. It is Great River. Yeah, the Great River, the Tigris. So it's different. So I'm guessing it corresponds with the nations that they're in captivity to. Now, why would he be near Tigris? Because the Medes and Persians own or live in that area instead of where Babylon was, which is, 50, 60 miles to the west or so. So that seems to be why he's here. Or maybe he's on a business trip, or maybe he lives here, because it is 50, 60 miles from where he was in some of his other visions, like the Euphrates River.
50, 60 miles is a long time to go on foot, P.S.
I know.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. Somebody read 5 and 6.
I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude.
Wow.
Okay. We would think this could be who?
Jesus.
Right, you would think. So let's compare these words to, if somebody wants to turn to Revelation 1, there's a description of Jesus in Revelation 1:13.
Really? Okay.
So if actually all you guys turn to Revelation 1:13 through 16, we'll be looking at. And so tell me,
did they describe him in Daniel 2, one of Daniel's things, or was it just Michael?
they describe the appearance of a man with a bar, chapter 8.
Yeah.
And then this could be another one.
Yeah.
Could be. We're trying to just figure out. But looking at Revelation 1:13 through 16, and I'm going to read off the ones in the descriptions in Daniel. So the first thing I have in verse 5 of Daniel, chapter 10, is he's a man. Is anything in Revelation 13 through 16 a man?
Son of man.
Okay. In Daniel 5, he's clothed with linen.
And a garment down to the foot.
Okay. His loins or hips are girded with pure gold of Uphaz or whatever that is. But
the girt about the paps with the golden girdle. And over here it says, dressed in a robe reached down to his feet and with a golden sash around his chest. His chest.
Yeah, so that one's his chest. The other one's maybe his hip areas. Is it?
Where paps are.
His paps are a man's breasts area.
Oh, then that's his chest.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What is
his loins? I'm sorry, it's loins in Daniel. It's loins, my bad.
His loins? Well, that's the opposite area.
Because it's his loins are girded with pure gold or a belt of fine gold. So it would be like his hips or something like that. So it's he's got gold there. It's just a little further down on his body.
Yeah.
His body's like beryl. Does it mention beryl, which is a precious jewel? Mention anything like that?
What is topaz? What color is that?
It's like a
Yellow.
diamond.
Like a yellow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Diamond. No.
Yeah, it says his head was white, like wool or snow, and his eyes were the flame of, and his feet were like fine brass.
All right, hold on for a second.
Oh, sorry. I see nothing.
Okay. The next thing I have is a face as the appearance of lightning.
Eyes were blazing like fire.
What's kind
Anything else in any of those verses up through 16?
His hair white.
Okay.
Like wool.
Face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance.
Yeah. So one's lightning, the other one's like the sun shining. What about eyes as flaming torches?
Yeah.
Yep.
Eyes flame of fire.
Arms and feet like burnished brass.
Yeah.
Bronze.
Fine brass.
Okay.
Feet was unto brass as they burned in a furnace. And his voice, many water.
The voice is yours as waters, and mine's the voice of a multitude. So his voice was powerful. And you made mention of his hair, his head.
Yeah.
What is it?
No.
What did it say in Daniel about his hair?
It doesn't say anything about his hair or his head outside of just his face as lightning. So question is, we would think, I mean, I would think maybe it's Jesus, right? I mean, it sounds like him. It doesn't sound like they described any of the angels and that kind of detail or strength, but I'm not 100% sure. But we got to quit, and we'll come right back, and we'll start in verse 7.
Okay.
All right.